Hello and welcome to the Cryptocurrency News channel. So, we're going to do the TAFA, MA, and chart analysis for February 17th. It's mainly going to be kind of like fundamental analysis because the chart in TA doesn't really mean too much right now. If you actually look at the chart in TA for yesterday, it would have actually been positive, but obviously today didn't play out that way, and that's because Russia's movements with Ukraine and kind of like the breakdown and some diplomatic tensions. Now, do I think Russia is actually going to invade Ukraine? No, I still don't think Russia is actually going to invade Ukraine. If they do, it will be after the Olympics, I believe, and the Olympics will conclude on Sunday. So if they do, it's probably going to be next week. If they invade, screw all the TA, it's probably going to drop down to 30,000 or so. Is my guess of it, because like them invading will definitely be terrible for inflation. It'll be terrible for like oil prices in Europe, and plus it generates a lot of uncertainty. Of course, there's the possibility of nuclear winter as well, if that actually happens, and NATO gets involved and they fight, obviously, because neither side, like Russia can't really afford to lose face, and if they start losing, things could get actually really, really bad. But I think they will try to resolve it diplomatically. However, the reason we dipped 600 points in the stock market and several thousand points in the crypto market today is because Russia actually expelled U.S. diplomats from Moscow. Now, that gets people really, really, really nervous because you generally don't expel other people's diplomats unless you're planning for war. So that could be seen as a precursor to war. Now, Putin might just be doing this as a bluff. His demands are that NATO never ensure him that they never allow Georgia or Ukraine into their organization. Now, NATO has been denying Ukraine admission into NATO for the last 15 years. So I don't think they were about to admit Ukraine into NATO anytime soon. In fact, NATO, including the United States, were the ones that actually talked Ukraine into giving Russia back their nuclear missiles in return for assurance that since they don't have nukes anymore, they would actually back up Ukraine in the case that Russia invades. And obviously, the situation in Crimea heightened those tensions. So the Crimea incident is why Ukraine really wants to join NATO. But of course, to not completely piss off Russia, they have denied Ukraine entrance for the last 15, 16 years or so. And that's what the situation is. But Russia wants guarantees and assurance that they will never be admitted into NATO. However, I do think NATO and the EU will actually support Ukraine in the case of a Russian invasion. But I still think Russia wants to resolve this diplomatically, but their demands are just not being met by the West and especially the United States. And they start off with a demand that basically like was always off the table, that being that Ukraine and Georgia never be admitted into NATO as a promised. So I think like we are looking at sanctions on Russia. The U.S. does not directly want to get militarily involved, but we do have troops within NATO, and those will probably be involved as well. The Nordic countries will definitely support Ukraine. France and Germany are a lot less committal, especially Germany because they do actually depend on Russia for a lot of their energy. So that's actually what's making the market go down right now, the uncertainty in geopolitics and the fact that invasion could actually be imminent next week once the Olympic ends. Once again, I do not actually think Russia will invade, but the possibility has been heightened from maybe like 15% to maybe like 30%. But remember, there's still a 70% chance that they don't actually invade, or it'll be very, very small scale. There are basically tensions because near the border, a few like small pro-Russian groups have actually attacked a school or something. But that is not like the Russian army. That's just some pro-Russia separatist groups in Ukraine. Shouldn't be looked at as like something super serious. But tensions are still mounting, and that is the only reason Bitcoin is dipping. Bitcoin was actually rising up before this because remember, we had good earnings reports in Q1. Consumer spending was still strong, fairly strong at least. And the Fed did not raise interest rates in the meeting in February. And they signaled that they actually might be raising the rates by 50 basis points in March, but I think a lot of that's already priced in. And people saw that the market was pretty strong and they wanted to diversify into cryptos. But now this whole like renewed tension has actually driven the market down, as you can see right here on the graph, unfortunately. And we will continue to go down if Russia heightens tensions. If, however, this thing gets resolved diplomatically within the next few days, next few weeks, or they put it on a ceasefire or hiatus, I do expect the market to bounce back. So it really matters on, it really hinges on the diplomacy right now, whether it'll plunge down or go back up. So that's actually what we have right now with the Russia-Ukraine situation and how things are actually playing out. On the technicals, everything is going to be negative. Obviously, when you have a 3,000 point dip because of diplomatic tensions, TA signals don't really matter much, but like the oscillators are still neutral. But of course, the EMAs are all going to be negative. Only the SMA on the 30 is actually positive, but it's all negative at that. Definitely would not be buying right now unless you're looking for a bounce back, unless you are definitely predicting that you are absolutely confident that Russia will not invade, then it would be actually a time to buy. But I am not sure on that. I don't think the rest of the world can be sure on that. So definitely hold back your money. Not really sure if I would sell right now either, because if they do decide not to invade, it will bounce back up to probably mid 40s at least. So right now, I would definitely just hold pat, hold tight, yield farm, stake, whatever, because I think that is probably the best resolution. On the weekly, everything is gone to sell as well. Definitely, like, I would, unless you're really, really, like, committed to buying the bounce back, which I really wouldn't. It's like a little risk. It's too risky. It is a possibility that they resolve it diplomatically within the next few days and we bounce back to 45,000. That's a possibility. I just don't feel confident enough to actually bet on that. And the rest of the TA signals honestly do not mean anything right now because everything is just basically resting on this one tension. So if you're wondering whether to buy or to sell and looking at exponential moving averages, you're not really going to be betting on any of the TA signals right now. You're going to be betting on like, will the United States and Europe resolve the situation with Russia peacefully within the next couple of days or within the next week? If that happens, we'll be back and going back up to like 45,000, maybe even 50,000 way before we dump any more. If they invade, we could go down to as low as 30,000. So you can take your bets either way. I wouldn't bet either way because the situation is really volatile. Like it seems like Russia is kind of like sort of forcing the issue right now because the whole Ukrainian thing, like Ukraine wasn't going to get admitted into NATO anytime soon. They denied them for the last 15 years, but Russia's pushing for like perpetual denial of Ukraine into NATO, and they don't want to give that because of the whole Crimea incident, and that really gotten people's tensions heightened up back in 2014. So like both sides are kind of pushing the issue right now. And the U.S. is saying that Russia's looking for an excuse to invade, but realistically, what I'm thinking, what I'm seeing is like the Russia kind of sees like the U.S. as movable right now off their position, so they're pushing as hard as they can to get what they want. But if they don't get what they want, they might like basically set up the bluff for as long as possible. But I think they really don't want to invade, or they might do a small invasion just to test the West. But that would tank markets as well. So predictability is basically zero at this point. I would definitely just hold pat because it can go either way very, very quickly, depending on how the diplomatic situation actually comes out. I would say like don't really pay attention to like TA signals right now or buy or sell signals, because none of that matters right now. It's all about the diplomat. It's all about like how diplomatically it resolves out. And we will be watching around the end of the Olympics to see if we go up or down. So that's the news for today. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe. Hit that bell notifications button, and I will see you tomorrow.